This is a Chinese PSP. This is a knockoff of a PSP that was built in China. Has this nice piano black, smooth, glossy finish with a megapixel camera, some QC pass label, it's hard to read. It's 4 gigabytes with an FM radio built into this thing. Even has a micro SD card slot. I think that's supposed to be a micro SD card slot. Doesn't do anything at all, though. You try to put it in, it's going to freak and give you an error on the screen if you do that. But this is a Chinese PSP. It's completely different from a regular PSP. It's a game player, is what they like to officially call it. PSP MP5. An MP3 file would be a music file or an audio file. You know, people like to listen to music as MP3s. MP4 is, of course, a video file. So MP5 would be an interactive file. And that's what this thing mostly plays. It plays games and it plays movies. So you have the game console, you have Music Hub, you have photo, cinema, camera, FM radio, a tool that could change stuff with this thing. So we can play a game here. Let's move around just like the Japanese systems. They usually use a circle button as a button to select something. Let's go into the emulator and play some Chinese Super Mario Brothers. It's on here. That's right, there's a Chinese variant of Super Mario Brothers on here, and here it is. Looks just like the American one, but it has Chinese text everywhere. Let's see if we get this game in here. The sound isn't that bad. Sounds actually pretty good for a device of this kind. I mean, it's not the greatest sound you'd ever expect to hear, but it sounds pretty good. The controls feel very wonky. It doesn't really feel well refined. The buttons are kind of delayed a lot of the time too. Pressing might experience a significant delay. I know it's nothing with the actual game itself, because I did manage to copy this ROM, this Chinese Super Mario Brothers ROM, onto my computer to play it on a better emulator. And yeah, it works just fine, just like how the game's supposed to play. So it's obviously this device thing. It's very laggy, so listen to the sound quality. Yeah, that sounds just like the real NES system. This device came loaded with a bunch of NES games that were already installed by the people who made this device. I'm not even sure what company made this thing. This thing makes it look like it could play like modern top tier games. It's got a box. I don't have the box for this anymore. My father bought me this thing back in 2011, and I don't have the box for it anymore. So it showed like a really nice, refined 3D image of like a car racing around on the front cover to make you think that this is something that could play. Like, it looks like something like a modern Gran Turismo game. This thing is nowhere near as good as that. There's classic games. They have this folder here called Classic Games. They put like hundreds of Game Boy Advance games on here. There's like so many, and what they select is kind of odd. I mean, we have the NES games mixed in here. There's like Popeye. There's Power Rangers. There's that freaking Galador game is on here. There's Naughty, Frogger's Adventure, Scary Dreams, Berenstain Bears. Yeah, it's Berenstain. That's going to put a real stain on our memory. And there's Gundam. There's all sorts of, it's really random. Like, why do they choose these games? There's Castle Capers, Urban. Oh, here's a favorite of mine. Tetris Worlds. I actually kind of like this version more than the home console version. Tetris Worlds. For the Game Boy Advance. That's what Game Boy Advance emulation. It's actually pretty good with some games. I wouldn't really trust this thing with overly serious gaming, considering the controls are somewhat delayed. And the other issue too, there's no way you could save progress at all. You can't save progress at all. It says you can. Like if you press this button here, it does give you the option to restart, resume, load progress game. I tried the save game feature, and that's a load of bull. It doesn't actually save your game at all. So here's Tetris Worlds for the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance version being played on here, where you can play. Remember, you can just play a traditional game of Tetris. This thing is actually best for playing these kinds of games, these short, quick little games where you just pick up and play them and have some fun for a bit. And this Tetris World, actually, the screen quality isn't that bad too. If you press hard like that, you can see this screen's getting warped a bit if you press. Even when you press buttons somewhat hard around here too, sometimes you can notice the screen kind of warps a bit, or you can see like light imperfections on the screen. I don't even know I can't really see the screen very well. But yeah, the screen, it is a decent enough screen. I mean, for a cheap Chinese device, I've seen way worse. I mean, it's definitely better than one of those LCD game things they used to give in Happy Meals, right? It's way better than that, obviously. So we could go pick another game. It's really random. Like, I wonder how they figured out all these games, how to put all these games here. As Tetris Worlds, Uno, Rugrats, then Scooby-Doo, Firefighter, their Hero Legend, Hide and Seek, Hot Drop, Jewel Fever, and there's even some weird bootleg games on here too. There's like some weird bootleg game, but I think they're Game Boy Advance games. Like, look at this weird game here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Pinball Fish. Yeah, this is a weird game. You'd think it would be a pinball game based on its title, but it's actually a Breakout clone, a clone of Breakout or Arkanoid. Let's see if we can hear it better. Laggy as hell, but it's still pretty fun. I don't think this is that bad of a game. I mean, for a free game, like a free tech demo game to this on here, it actually works pretty good. I actually kind of like the music here too. The music is actually kind of nice and charming, actually. It actually sounds like something I might play when I try to go to sleep. Maybe I should try playing this to help me go to sleep sometimes. Playing this overly soothing game. I don't think this is a real game. I think it's just something that someone made for a multi-cart, supposedly. And why is it called Pinball Fish, anyways? I don't see any pinballs in this. But oh, look, I picked up a power-up that's going to make my ball go slow. It's like I'm playing it on the moon or something like that. It's not that bad of a game overall. It actually is a pretty decent. I mean, but again, I have a high tolerance for some of these bad games, seeing how bad some of these games are. I mean, the AVGN's never going to review anything like this. I just don't think he ever will. I doubt the AVGN ever knows something like this is ever going to exist. But yeah, it's not that bad music, actually. I should make a video more covering this game in the future. Yeah, it's Pinball Fish, one of the weird, hokey games. When we think of hokey games, we usually think of games that are on the NES. You know, like a lot, they make these retro, because this essentially is an emulation. This system pretty much is an emulation machine. I've seen them made for, like, the NES, where they have, like, tons of NES games, like, ROM hacks of NES games. This one seems to have a lot of these weird Game Boy Advance games on here. Look at it, here's a game where you can play as Ness from Earthbound. 2D game where you play as Ness from Earthbound. And you have to shoot this long wire thing. You have to stop those balls from hitting us. I've had this thing for like 13 years now, or 14 years now. I forget how long I've had. Yeah, I've had it since 2011. It's 2025 now, so I've had this thing for years. I didn't even notice this game here because it stars Ness, a character from Earthbound, a game that I kind of loathe, but everyone else seems to really like. You have to stop those balls from hitting it. You get a score for doing it. This actually isn't that bad of a game. I mean, it's obviously some sort of bootleg game, obviously. And we think bootleg games are stuff that exists that, you know, if you see stuff like this on mobile now, this thing kind of is like a mobile thing. Like, part of the reason why they build it so cheap, you could tell by looking around at this thing. This thing is made out of very cheap plastic quality, as you can see here. It's like fun. It's like, you can even see inside if you look carefully. You can't really get it on camera, but if you look carefully in there, you can see it's like breaking apart in there too. It's even breaking at the bottom of it too. This thing is made out of a cheap plasticky thing, and these things are completely redundant a lot of the time. I don't know, these things don't really do much, but I remember showing this to a friend a long time ago, and he's like, whoa, look, if you actually started like taking, I'm like, no, don't break it. And he's like, yeah, well, I just want to see, like, this is cheap and crappy. Yeah, it is cheap and crappy. Why they make these for poor kids in like Vietnam or Singapore or some country like that, so they could play. So they don't need a lot of money to go and buy something that they could be, you know. But obviously, there's way better stuff nowadays to enjoy. There's a headphone jack there. There's also it's not an auxiliary port. It's actually like a cable. It uses this weird cable thing where you connect it in there. It has AV connectors, so you can connect it to an actual TV using a. Yeah, I'm not sure if I still have that or not. I don't think most of these games have looked very well. I'm pretty sure these PAL and Shine, or at least based on this thing, I'd say it's in PAL, because the frame rates are slower. They're very sluggish on this thing. That's what that game is like. It's just some Earthbound type game. There's so many, like, they really did put a lot of stuff. I mean, they really did for I'll admit, I have to give them credit for that. They really did for a lot of entertainment. It's too bad, like, Pac-Man World 2 is a game I don't think you can play in one sitting, and yet there's no way to save your game at all in any of these games. That's kind of a I mean, oh, look, here's F-Zero for the Game Boy Advance. This is one of those F-Zero games. This thing's actually pretty good with 3D Game Boy Advance games like Nintendo. You know, yeah, Nintendo's gonna love the fact that their games are on this thing, right? F-Zero for Game Boy Advance. Oh, so is this like the original game? Sound quality's not bad. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like another one of those hacked pirate games or whatever you call them. Pirated hacked games just driving by here. Now, this is what you expect for F-Zero. You can get hit. This is just like the SNES F-Zero. I think it's on Game Boy. I know if this is an actual F-Zero game. I haven't really studied much of the F-Zero games. Well, you see here, the Mode 7 looking graphics actually perform pretty well on this cheap, crappy device. This is actually, unfortunately, this is actually kind of the best you could ever see on this device, because most games on this device, or I would say like most, like this isn't really the best for a lot of this isn't really the best for a lot of games. We'll see in a bit. Well, I'm going to demonstrate some more games in a bit. But yeah, I'm going to demonstrate some more games. In addition to letting you play the games that come on here, it's not like some of those Atari systems, like those retro remake Atari systems that they throw out there that only play the games it comes with. This game actually This thing actually does allow you to add your own games to it. See, it's in the Games on Demand folder. I guess it's because they're games that you demand on here. See, I added Galaxian for the NES. It's really a Famicom game because it never came out outside of Japan on the NES. But here it is. Here's Galaxian for the Famicom, and I'm playing it on this thing. I think this is a Famicom version of Galaxian. It plays pretty decent on here, actually. Still not really as good as playing on the better emulation. There's tons of way better emulation machines out there. You get those ones that look like a PS5 that play games better than this. Heck, I'm pretty sure the original iPhone had a calculator that could probably emulate games better than this. Without a doubt. But one thing that this thing does have over any kind of smartphone is the fact that it has real physical analog and buttons on it. I really hate those touch screens they have now on your phones, where it's like you have to use those to play games on your phone. It's almost impossible to play these classic games on there. I mean, it's fine for if you're playing mobile games, but classic games, nah, forget about it. It's not really good for that. It also plays Genesis games, too. Here's the original Sonic the Hedgehog being played on this device. I didn't find out until years later I could play Genesis games. I think I didn't come with any Genesis games. Just came with a handful of NES and Game Boy Advance games. Sonic Team. This is a horribly laggy version of Sonic the Hedgehog. I hope you don't mind horribly laggy games, because that's what you're going to get with this thing. Just look at how freaking laggy it is. Like it's trying to keep up with Sonic's speed and the blast processing. You know, blast processing used to brag about in the Genesis commercials. They used to brag about that a lot, but just look at how... And this isn't my camera being laggy. On my camera, I'm using my phone camera, my Samsung Galaxy A04s. It's a really good camera. Look at this. This is an early variant where you just get killed like that. Yeah, screw Sonic. It doesn't even play all Genesis games. There's Virtua Racing. Virtua Racing doesn't really work at all because it's a 3D game. This thing just doesn't like to play 3D games. Why would it play 3D games? It doesn't play 32X games. It plays columns fine, but Konami, Collector Series, you pretty much all the games that I added on here. Let's look at some other cool stuff this thing has. This thing also has a music player here, like a music hub, where you can actually play music. You actually play songs on here. There's all music. I'm just gonna... Yes, that's how it works at playing music. It's actually not a bad speaker. You wouldn't really expect a cheap device like this to have a great speaker, but it actually works pretty well with that. Also videos. I think there's also video files on here too. Let's see if we could... Well, there is a camera on here. Go to the camera. The camera is like probably one of the worst cameras you'd ever see, but what do you expect for a camera like this? See, it just looks like this. Let's take a picture of something. Let's take a picture of the space shuttle, the Lego space shuttle, and see how this turns out. It is possible to zoom in. It's kind of hard to do that. You have to like press these things. I guess you could zoom in. I don't want to zoom in too close and zoom out. Try and get all this in the frame, and I'm just gonna show it in here. As you see, that's a photo that was shot by his camera. So the quality really sucks. It's all grainy and low quality. What do you expect for a camera like this from a cheap Chinese device like this? I could also view photos that you could save on here. You could view them. It's better to view them in the browser, because view them in the photo thing, it's gonna like take a long time to show any of them. So it shows here too. You can see view all the names of all the photos that you put on here, the images you put on here. I have a lot of like art on here that I've got from people over the years. A lot of fan art. Some of the best fan art that I have are on here. There's this. Some of them look really great, and some of them not so much. Look at this fan art that I got years ago, as you see here. Yeah, this is from Catastrophism I got years ago. That's a really nice drawing, actually. And it actually looks surprisingly well on this. It's actually one of the better looking images on this Chinese PSP with the crappy screen on it. Just press X to go back, like in a lot of these Japanese menus. Yeah, it looks nice too. It's not really the best quality, but look, this actually doesn't look that bad. It actually was a good demonstration of how well the screen is. It actually isn't that bad of a screen, actually, for a cheap device that otherwise has the build quality of a McDonald's Happy Meal toy. Yeah, it doesn't look that bad on here. It's a nice art, one of my favorite fan arts that I got years ago from Dream Answer. Here's a surprise gift that was given to me. It was commissioned to me by someone named Melk100 on DeviantArt, and they've also known as Sweeney Boy and other things, and he commissioned Dark Dragon Deception on DeviantArt to make me as a surprise gift that I got for Christmas in 2022. I still thank him a lot for that, and look, I'm paying tribute to him in this video. Remember that time Jason and Mason aired on Cartoon Network? My Chinese PSP, definitely remember that. So bottom line, this thing isn't that bad. It has several great features on it. It's not one of the greatest things ever. It's mostly just a gimmick, like a gimmicky novelty thing, if anything. It has tons of games on it, which could be fun if you have low expectations. This could be somewhat fun, but mostly just a novelty more than anything else. It's like PSP, a piece of technology from another part of the world. It's intended to be used in another part of the world. This isn't that bad. Screen quality isn't always the best, but it has some games, and this isn't really a bad thing, but this was very cheap. I'd say it could be worth it. This is a great device. Well, somewhat decent device, or over what decent could be for some people. Has an FM radio in it that only works if you connect like headphones to it, because uses the headphones as an antenna for it so the radio come in. I tried using it a few days ago, and the radio actually still works surprisingly well. It's FM only, but it still works surprisingly well. It's better than the clock radio I have right now, being a radio. This is a pretty decent device. They're all still holds up the test time. The battery doesn't work very well anymore, but what do you expect for something that's like 13 or 14 years old? Of course the battery doesn't work well. It still works better than the batteries in some iPhones that are like only 3 or 4 years old. So yeah, this is a Chinese PSP. This is Ray Phoenix signing out.